What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Windy City Gridiron Radio with you, as always, your host, Robert Zaglinski. And I am pleased to be joined by my supposed identical twin tonight, Aaron Leming, who I believe since the last time we actually recorded a podcast together, this is the first time where you are part of the same team at Windy City Gridiron. So this is my official congratulations over live air, Aaron.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think this is the first one, so it's
Yeah,
good to be doing this as a part of the team now.
it's been a few months, and I'm an awful person, so I don't think I ever actually just said anything. I think I just sent you like Thanos rings or something. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
well, you
we were adding Infinity Gems or Infinity Stones.
well, I mean, you kind of knew about this anyway, so it was kind of one of those. You're one of the reasons I'm doing it, so you know.
Aaron, stop it! I know I'm great. It's fine. You don't have to. You don't have to let everybody else know. Let's. You can follow Aaron on Twitter at Aaron Leming NFL. You can follow me on Twitter at Robert Zuglinski and follow us on Twitter at WCG Gridiron. And we're gonna jump right into it. The news is old by now. By the time you listen to this, it'll be a Friday morning, Friday afternoon. Roquan Smith is back, Aaron. Yay! I'm clapping. I'm miming clapping. Roquan Smith's holdout is over after missing the entirety of camp. I'm not sure if it was just because he didn't want to spend time in the awful dorms in Bourbonnais at Olivet Nazarene, or if it was legitimately due to the fine print and language in his contract. Whatever the case it was, he rejoined the Bears this week. He signed his 4-year, $18 million deal, and he traveled with them to Denver and was immediately in full pads and was calling defensive signals for them on Wednesday as the Mike linebacker, everybody said that he would be, and that he would be the face of this defense. Uh, did we overblow those 3 weeks of practice, Aaron, or 3.5 weeks of practice?
I'm starting to wonder if we might have. I'll be completely honest, and I mean, my expectations before he had signed was kind of the fact that he probably wasn't going to be very involved, and he'd be lucky to play one preseason game and have a full week of practice, and then, he wasn't going to start week one. But I think as we're seeing things progress right now, I think it's pretty optimistic, but at the same time, I think it's becoming more realistic that there's a pretty good chance that he could maybe play a series or two this week, and he should play a decent amount next week. But I think he might be ready for week one. And people keep this is and I called people out on Twitter for it, and it was kind of a joking thing, but at the same time, it's not. It's like now we can finally stop pretending like Nick Kwiatkowski is somehow even close to the same type of player that Roquan Smith is supposed to be. If Roquan Smith's even close to Nick Kwiatkowski over this next few weeks worth of practice and games, then Roquan Smith is going to be starting. And I think that's going to be the case. And I think that Roquan Smith is probably going to be better.
Yeah, the thing with the Kwiatkowski then, and I was one of also, I kind of also joined in on that with you, that conversation, is that was more of a Bears narrative than him actually flashing. I was there every day at camp, and I'm going to say that he looked better and more comfortable than he did in his first 2 seasons. But the way that you'd hear the Bears talk about it, or than the way you'd hear other tweets and other reports, they made him sound as if he was playing at an all-pro level, that he was going to keep a top 10 pick like Roquan Smith out the field. The Bears drafted Roquan Smith to take Kwiatkowski's job because they liked Smith's ability more. And the fact that Smith is already calling signals for them, like I just mentioned a few minutes ago, and like you said, that just everything paints the picture of him immediately stepping into that role, regardless of all the supposed good that Kwiatkowski accomplished in Bourbonnais. That was such a weird narrative to me, and to me, not that it matters now, but that was just part of the Bears' kind of public relations battle they were privately or subtly holding with Smith.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was definitely a PR play in there. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And I think some of the, I guess you could say, the reports that were coming out definitely seemed Bears flavored. But I mean, either way, the way I look at it is, I think Kwiatkowski is a guy that maybe even middle of this year, next year, whatever it may be, this is somebody who can be a decent starter. But much like Adrian Amos, and to the dismay of many, the reason that Kwiatkowski can be a solid starter is because of the talent that he's going to have around him. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that a guy like Roquan Smith has to be there, even a guy like Danny Trevathan. You know, it's a situation where he is more of a supporting player than he is going to be at the forefront of their linebacking core. But the good news about this is that not only do they have good depth, but this is also a situation where Nick Kwiatkowski, some of his best damages come against inside blitzes. And I think this is something that we're going to see a lot more of this year, and I'm sure we'll get into it more as we get into this podcast. But the Bears have a big hole at pass rush right now, and I think that even if Kwiatkowski isn't starting per se every single game, I think he's still going to see some reps, whether that be at inside linebacker, whether that be in random formations, whatever they do. But I think he's still going to have a decent role on the team. But I mean, the ultimate reality is you don't take an inside linebacker in the top 10 unless you think the guy's going to be a star. I really like Roquan Smith, but the expectations have to be high at this point. I mean, I would say I'm going to go against the narrative of what the Bears have pushed out, and I'm going to say you should expect him to start week 1, and you should expect him to have a good rookie season. You don't take an inside linebacker in the top 10 if that isn't going to be the case.
That's what I was going to lead into next. Aaron, I'm going to have you go with a little more hyperbole because you've said privately as much. What are reasonable expectations for Roquan Smith his rookie year, and compare it to the other top rookie defenders in the league? What should we see from him? I for one, and just gauging based off what you said and what you told me, think that these 3 weeks will matter little in how he plays in 2018, or the missed 3 weeks, that is.
Yeah, I think, I mean, and like you definitely have a little lower expectations than I do, and I guess this is kind of giving away something that I'll probably be putting out a few weeks on Windy City Gridiron, just some bold predictions or whatever. But I think that Roquan Smith should be in the running, if not win Rookie of the Year and a Defensive Rookie of the Year. And obviously that's all dependent on what happens, especially with a guy like Nick Chubb. But I think when you're a guy like Nick Chubb, or Bradley Chubb, sorry, yeah, Nick Chubb's a running back, Bradley Chubb. But when you're a guy like Bradley Chubb and you've got Von Miller next to you and you've got the different options that they have, I mean, they have a deep amount of pass rushers. So I don't know. I look at this situation and I say, okay, a guy like Roquan Smith, if he plays all 16 games, if he can stay healthy, there's no reason why he can't total, 115, 120 tackles. He's going to have sacks because that's one of the things that he was good at Georgia. And especially if you sprinkle in a few turnovers, interceptions especially, I mean, he's one of the quote-unquote second picks for Defensive Rookie of the Year. And I think he was, second overall in odds or whatever it may be. But, I mean, that's the kind of production in my mind that you need from an inside linebacker taken at number 8 overall. And I'm going to go ahead and say that those should be the expectations.
I don't necessarily agree that he shouldn't be in the running. I'm just looking at how the voters have voted on this in recent years. An inside linebacker hasn't won this award since 2012 with Luke Kuechly. Since then, it's been Marshawn Lattimore last year, Joey Bosa, Roquan Smith's holdout brother that everyone wanted to compare to in 2016. Like I said, Marcus Peters, 2015, Aaron Donald, 2014, and Sheldon Richardson with the Jets in 2013. So that just more paints to me of a picture of voters looking at these field tilting positions, or these positions that get those eye-popping stats like sacks or picks, or in the case of Lattimore, just being the best cornerback on a team that probably could have went to the Super Bowl if not for a last-second Hail Mary collapse. So, but I'll agree with you. If Smith can get those sacks, which is something he was very good at Georgia, if he can get those flash plays, if he can get a pick or two, if he can get some forced fumbles, this isn't the normal year where there's that kind of superstar pass rusher aside from Bradley Chubb. There isn't that kind of corner I'm in love with like a Lattimore or a Peters that is going to ball out and get 6 or 7 picks as a rookie or be the catalyst for a great defense. The field is really thin, and to me, Smith, at least from an immediate impact standpoint, just stands out so much above them. So it looks like, I mean, this could go fully Bears and something happens to him and he pulls a hamstring and everyone blames it on the holdout or something. But it looks like the path is clear for him to get the award, depending on how much that matters to you.
Yeah, and I think it's more of an accolade. I mean, ultimately, as long as he stays healthy and he's productive. And that's kind of the thing, is the Bears have a solid defense, but I think right now, when you look at other teams, and Minnesota's probably not the best example because they're one of the best defenses in the league, and so on and so forth. But the Bears don't really have much star power. I think Akeem Hicks is vastly underrated. I think Leonard Floyd's one of those guys who could end up having 10, 12 sacks this year, and everybody looks at it as an elite pass rusher. But right now, when you really look at what they have, they don't have a ton of star power. So it would be great for somebody like a Roquan Smith to come out and be that kind of player. And ultimately, especially with them being a drafted player. But they're going to need some kind of boost. And I think that Vic Fangio, more than a lot of people are leading on to right now, I think that Vic Fangio is going to have to be very, very creative this year in how they get to the quarterback and how they do different things. And I have no doubt that he can do that. But I think that somebody like Roquan Smith, with his speed, with his instincts, is going to be a big part of the defense, and he absolutely should. Not to mention the fact that when you think of Chicago Bears football, I mean, you think of linebackers. I mean, that's just the thing. So, I mean, what better way to kick off a new era of Bears football after sucking for God knows how long is to
7 years,
implant.
7 years, be honest.
Yes. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, that's fair. And what better way to kick off a new generation of Bears football that's actually good and fun to watch than having that star-studded inside linebacker.
Let's flip gears away from Roquan Mania. I'm sure we'll come back to it in a bit. Let's go to the offensive side of the ball. And the Bears, like I mentioned, are visiting the Broncos this week. They had 2 joint practices in advance of a preseason game on Saturday. And there were a lot of positive offensive reports. You had the tight ends, which yours truly was one of the really the only people to point out consistently every night that this was the Bears' best offensive position. You had Trubisky looking generally sharp. But to me, the story and what is to me the weirdest controversy over the past week and a half or so is what the Bears have at center. Cody Whitehair, despite James Daniels' stellar game, again, with the number 2s, but it was still stellar and dominant against the Bengals, the Bears are sticking with Cody Whitehair at center, despite struggles snapping the ball, despite struggles he apparently had this week snapping the ball. You had a defiant Mitch Trubisky back at center, which, I mean, you're not really going to decry Trubisky for backing up one of his teammates or something at a shot or any public criticism, because I'm sure the Bears players know that Whitehair's taking some heat for his play at center because many don't feel he's a natural center. I'm rambling on at this point, Aaron. What do we think of this Daniels Whitehair mess and the Bears' insistence?
I think that it's probably fair to give them the rest of the week to say, okay, let's see what happens in the game. Here's my expectation, and this may not be a realistic expectation, but here's my expectation. If they kick off the game on Saturday, and I would expect the starters to probably play at least a quarter at this point, and
yeah.
Let's say they go out there, they do their thing, and Cody Whitehair continues to struggle snapping the ball. I think at that point in time, much like what happened with John Timu, and how bad he struggled in that first game, and then they turned around and gave it to Jonathan Anderson. I think that they need to do a very similar situation. Obviously, neither one of those two are going to start, but I'm talking about, making an in-game adjustment with your quote-unquote starters. In this situation, they actually are starters, and say, okay, James Daniels is still getting only reps at center. I mean, that's been put out multiple different avenues this week so far. So, I mean, that's out there. I'm pretty sure you can probably confirm that as well, because I think I guess you were at practice last week. But the point being is you can't say that, we're just giving Daniels reps at center because we're short at center. When Hronis Grasu's back, they have other options at center right now, and it's very evident that they've seen something with Daniels to be at center. So the situation for me is simple. Okay, I think Cody Whitehair is a very good interior lineman, but the problem is he's had issues snapping the ball, especially in the shotgun, and that's going to do nothing but become an even bigger issue, and it has over the last week and a half, as you just pointed out. So, Matt Nagy is going to run a lot of shotgun. It's just as simple as that, a lot more than the Bears did last year. So if this is continuing to be an issue, this isn't something saying, okay, get Cody Whitehair out of the lineup. This is simply saying move Cody Whitehair back to a more natural position at left guard and give a shot to the rookie that you spent a second-round pick on, who should have won the first round by all accounts. I'm still shocked that he didn't. whose natural position is center, who he's got everything that you absolutely want. He's coached by a very similar, or was coached by a very similar offensive line guru in their, the Iowa State, or so the Iowa, Kurt Ferentz, the head coach over there. So you got two very similar mindsets with him and Harry Hiestand. So make the move, and that's kind of the thing at this point. Like you're giving him reps at center. You're not even getting him reps at guard anymore. And we've talked about this, and I'm sure you're about to say it, so I won't spoil it, but make it happen. It seems like at this point they're kind of fighting whatever urge it is. I don't know if they don't trust a rookie center in this offense or whatever it may be. There's obviously things that we don't know about that go on in practice, but from what we're seeing, and especially from my vantage point, continuing to push Whitehair out there at center doesn't make much sense, especially if you have a capable 20-year-old who you just spent a second-round pick on, who's obviously ready to play right now.
What I wonder about this is how much of this is like some kind of like machismo or some kind of like pillar or bar for Daniels to reach to earn it, not to just give it to him and get the experience right away, but to make him earn it and to like play this out as if it's some kind of competition. And to me, that doesn't benefit anyone in any sense, in any shape or form. I think at this point, Whitehair, and this is just me doing my amateur psychobabble. At this point, Whitehair probably or likely thinks he's more of a guard himself because he's seen how Daniels has played. He's seen that the Bears drafted a center. This is a guy that, I think this has been reiterated over and over again, Cody Whitehair was originally going to play left guard for the Bears before an injury to Hronis Grasu. So that's more of a natural position for him. And it's part of me thinks that he thinks it's inevitable. And with Daniels, if you're making him earn it, why not like just play him out with the number ones and get him that time and see if he can hold up? He had a week of practice, or maybe like a week and a half-ish of practice before he played against the Bengals, against number twos, and he looked awesome. What's your issue? He looked awesome on a week and a half of like real practice at the position. He was receiving no center repetitions before that, and comes into a game, I believe, blocked Chris Baker, a 2 or 3 time Pro Bowler with the Bengals. He's not obviously at that level anymore, but he's an established veteran, and was consistently blocking him and handling him in his first action after maybe like 7 or 8 days of practice. It makes no sense to me. This feels like, and I'm going to sound really stupid saying this. I don't want you to laugh. I don't want you to say it. This just feels like a John Fox or Adawa Loggins type thing, where like with Adam Shaheen last year, where they're just being stubborn, where they see something that they're concerned about and they don't want to pull the plug. It makes little sense to me.
I don't think you're particularly wrong, and maybe that's just a mental mindset because we've dealt with John Fox the last 3 years. We've had to deal with the decisions that he makes, and maybe there is some sort of psychosis that's going into this. It's just all a mind game, whatever it may be. And like I said, to a certain extent, I'm fine. Okay, if you want to start the game with Eric Kush at left guard and Whitehair at center, okay, that's fine. But if exactly what happened last week happens again this week, and you're out after the first series or whatever, bad snaps are happening, and it's really ruining the rhythm of what's going on, you've got to make the switch because here's the reality of the situation. You're going to have your starters out for maybe a quarter and a half. And then you've got probably a full half of football next Saturday. And then after that, you've got pretty much, the last final, few days of practice. You got a game on Thursday. So it's a short turnaround. Then you're making roster cuts and then you're into week 1. So things are really, really getting close to where you need to make the decision. And your comparison and why I think it might be somewhat valid, and hopefully it's not just mental, is the fact that this seems to be developing somewhat late. And that's why I'm waiting to really, I guess, project my frustration until we see what happens on Saturday, because I have this feeling that something's going to happen, or maybe we just get surprised and Daniels goes out there and he gets some reps with the first team. Maybe it's at the, after the first few series, whatever it may be. But at this point, I don't see any gain from the Bears side in general of saying, okay, we're gonna keep Whitehair at center for 1, and then 2, let's just keep Eric Kush at a left guard. That doesn't make any sense, because in my mind, regardless if it's center or left guard, You've got a 20-year-old that you just spent a second-round pick on. I know I've said that millions of times, but it just bears repeating. And you've got a veteran in Eric Kush who's been a spot starter. He's a guy is a really good depth piece for you, but that's it. So it behooves the Bears in this situation with all the young pieces that they have, everything else that they have, they're starting up brand new, to put him in the starting five. He's probably, well, I don't even say probably, I think he is one of their best starting five. And it doesn't make any sense to me personally to even be screwing around with this Eric Kush thing any longer. He's a good depth piece, and that's it. So even that worst case, if you want to put him at left guard, but the Bears are making it very obvious that they obviously see something in Daniels at center. So make the freaking move, man. I mean, it's just as simple as that. I don't need to see anything else.
All right, scale of 1 to 10. 1 being he's benched and the Bears aren't satisfying with him, and 10, he's absolutely one of the starting 5, regardless of guard or center. Where do you put James Daniels on that scale against the Packers in Week 1?
I'm gonna say I'm still pretty confident. I'm gonna say an 8. I'm not gonna go full 10, but I'm pretty confident that whether it be at guard or center, he's gonna be starting Week 1 on that line.
All right, let's move on to and I don't know. This might be. I don't know how much this is valid or how much this is just talking up an opponent and general fluff. But it seemed to me, just based off quotes that we've seen in the past few days, that the Broncos seem to be enamored with Mitch Trubisky. You have Von Miller the other day saying just, and I can pull up the exact quotes, so this has more credence to it. The other day, Von Miller, after Mitch Trubisky had reportedly looked very sharp, and ripped the Broncos' defense, Miller said, "Mitch is a great quarterback. I think with the offensive scheme and the players they have around him, he's going to be great. He was great last year, great in college as well. He's their franchise quarterback. He could do a little bit of everything, so you have to be prepared for everything." Now, that does sound like fluff, but this comes on the heels of a Pardon My Take appearance in March, where he said, when asked to discuss the NFC North landscape and Kirk Cousins' addition to the Vikings, he mentioned Trubisky, saying Mitchell Trubisky, he's going to be great. He was the first quarterback he actually mentioned on the podcast ahead of Cousins, ahead of Aaron Rodgers, and ahead of Matthew Stafford. Then today, I'll get to it, Aaron. I know you're patiently waiting. John Elway said after the Bears' second joint practice with the Broncos, "I liked Mitch coming out. I'm sure he's in his second camp and things are a little more clear, and he has a good feel for playing as much as he did last year and going through his first year. I think Mitch has got a lot of talent, and he's got a chance to have a really successful career. I think they continue to make strides. It's always hard. He's putting a new offensive system that he's got to get used to, and physically, he's got all the tools." Again, yes, that could sound like fluff to someone, but I for one believe it's the Broncos either being a little bit envious, considering their recent quarterback position and signing Case Keenum. Maybe they're not believers as much, and that this is finally someone outside of the Bears bubble seeing what the Bears have projected with Trubisky.
I think I'll be completely honest. Any of the quarterback evaluation that John Elway has, I don't.
Yeah, that's also fair. That's also fair.
I don't care for it all. But what I will say with the Von Miller thing is very interesting to me, because the one thing that really hasn't been pointed out very much in favor of his evaluation of, I guess, Trubisky, is that this is somebody that was, Trubisky had his opening hoorah in the preseason against the Broncos. I mean,
the 10 straight completions, the 18 to 20. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Von Miller saw him from the minute that he went. Now, I'll be completely honest. I mean, I'm one of the biggest Trubisky fans there is out there, but I can also be objective and say that he had moments where he flashed last year, and he also had moments where he was not good. But under no circumstances whatsoever would I say that he was remotely close to great at any point last year. But with that being said, I do think that there is something to the fact that Von Miller has said this on multiple occasions, and it definitely. I mean, there's got to be some merit to it, just for the simple fact that it's Von Miller. He's one of the best pass rushers in the league. He's played with guys like Peyton Manning. He's played against guys like Tom Brady. He knows good quarterbacks. I mean, his job may be to sack good quarterbacks, but he knows good quarterbacks. So I definitely think there's some merit to it, some way, shape, or form, and it's definitely nice to see. But I'll speak for myself and say I'm really tired of the hype in general around this team. I just want to see it. Even this Saturday, man, I just want to see something worth feeling excited about going into Week 1.
Yeah, I feel like really offensively, you have the camp highlights, you have the videos, you have all of this, you have Von Miller speaking the offense and Trubisky up. But I mean, I'm in the same boat. I want to see at least give us a flash play to back up, one flash play to back up the hype. That shouldn't be too much. Make a future Hall of Famer's words, and Von Miller is going to be a Hall of Famer. At least at his pace. I don't think you disagree. Make those words mean something. I'm not sure that Trubisky actually pays attention to what opposing players say of him anyway, but I'm sure some of his teammates do. I'm sure, obviously, as people who are going to listen to this podcast, the fan base does. I'm sure all the reporters, all of the aggregates pick that quote up. Make it mean something. Like, don't be hollow. Don't just be filled with helium. Just make it mean something. I don't think that's too much to ask.
No, not at all. I think that's kind of. I definitely, I'll admit, I'm a little bit more relieved now that the whole Roquan situation's figured out. But now it's kind of one of those things. I get it. Last week, whatever, it's going to take him a little bit to get going. I like the fact that Trubisky sounds like he's really progressed over the last.
Hold on. What you meant with the Roquan thing? I wanted to say something. Now that Roquan's holdout's over, now we can focus on Mitch Trubisky's preseason practice interceptions. That's the real focus now. Anyway.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, and this is something that you can speak to because you were there. So, it sounded like, and talking to you and seeing reports, that it sounded like towards the end of camp, outside of that game, it sounded like Trubisky was starting to make some strides. Maybe not look great by any means, but it sounded like he was starting to make some strides, and it sounded like he was doing the same thing this week. So I want to see it all put together.
I want to see consistency. That's been the thing all preseason. I can count on one hand the number of, and I know people are, it's practice. Okay, but I'm talking about from the prism of practice through the preseason, and I can count on one hand the number of objectively good practices from my point of view that Trubisky had. I can count on one hand the number of practices where he didn't throw multiple interceptions. That started to stop, like you just said, that I said at the end of camp, and he started to matriculate and really understand the offense now. But let's just see it. Let's just see him be consistent. Let's see this offense. Let's see this offense pick it up. Which an important part of that offense, Aaron, is Allen Robinson. And before we talk about Allen Robinson, who's going to play in his first game, first official Bears game after missing the Bengals game and missing the Hall of Fame game. You can follow Aaron on Twitter at Aaron Leming NFL. You can follow me on Twitter at Robert Zaglinski, and follow us on Twitter at WCG Gridiron. Robinson's playing his first game on Saturday after recovering from AC injury. He's reportedly had a sharp for him, considering where he's coming from his knee injury. A few days in Denver, connected a few times with Trubisky in the end zone today, abusing Broncos corners like Chris Harris and Bradley Roby. What are fair expectations for him? Do you think Robinson almost him being eased in isn't being talked about enough?
I think that I understand what they're doing, and I don't think it's a bad decision by any means, but it's kind of one of those situations, and I've seen it reported a few times the last few days, especially, where I think it's getting to a point where, yes, you got to work them in, but at the same time, and you got to be smart, but at the same time, you have to be able to establish some sort of chemistry with Trubisky consistently. And I think that's kind of where it's getting. Okay, put him out on the field for a few series, but come next weekend, in their dress rehearsal game, he needs to play the whole entire half. Ready to go. No more taking practices off, stuff like that. I mean, it's getting to a point where, yes, the Bears have a ton of options at receiver, at tight end, whatever it may be. You didn't just sign a guy for $14 million a year and give him the kind of guarantee that you gave him for him not to be the focal point of your offense, your number one receiver, your number one pass catcher, whatever it may be. So I think it's kind of getting to that point in the season. And I just said the same thing about Roquan. I just said the same thing about, the center position too, where things really need to start settling out. These position battles, everything else that's going on need to settle out, but especially a guy like Kyle Long, a guy like Allen Robinson. These are the kind of players that need to be good and ready to go, and especially Allen Robinson, because he's somebody who is coming off of a pretty horrific knee injury, and this is his first year in the system. This isn't something like Jordan Howard, who bangs up his knee and say, well, we're just going to sit him out. We know what Jordan Howard's capable of. Yes, it's the first year in the offense, but we know what he can do. Same thing with Tree Cohen. I'm not worried about him, but a guy like Allen Robinson, you pay him the kind of money that you pay him. You have the kind of expectations you have. It's time to throw him into the water and see what happens. At this point, if he somehow gets hurt or whatever it may be, then it's obvious that there was some sort of medical miscalculation, but it's getting to that point where you have to throw him into the water and let him swim and let him figure it out.
Yeah, I think in the preseason, it's okay if they start to ramp it up a little bit. Let's not go too far where he's playing. If they play the first quarter, for example, on Saturday, have him play half of the offensive drives. I think they've continually stated that the goal is the opener, the goal is the opener. So week 1 in Green Bay on Sunday Night Football, use preseason as a warm-up to really get Robinson going. I've seen a lot of sentiments that he's going to be in a pitch count during the regular season, but I'm more of your stance. Use the preseason as a pitch count. Use the preseason as a ways to get him ready, to get Robinson full go if he's going to be the number one. So where, if, like you just said, if he gets hurt against the Packers after going 100%, but this was never going to work out because you're not paying him $14 million to play at 75 or 80% for 5 or 6 games while returning from an ACL injury. You're paying him to catch 8 to 10 touchdowns. You're paying him to catch 1,000+ yards, and you're paying him to be a top 10 receiver, at least based off of his salary and based off of what you've previously seen from him. So, I think the plan going forward through the next 2 weeks, because he's not likely going to play against the Bills in that 5th preseason game, is fine. And then, let the dragon loose. Let sink or swim? Yeah, let him swim by himself. I've seen a lot of other sentiments saying that Anthony Miller is going to be the number 1 receiver, which I guess is fine, but you're basing it off of camp. This offense will be in trouble if the rookie wide receiver is the number 1, because I don't expect Miller necessarily to be Odell Beckham or anything. You need Robinson to be that number 1 if the Bears offense is going to have any success in 2018.
Yeah, I agree. I think Robinson's definitely got to be the focal point. Obviously, Trey Burton's also got to, he's got to do his part and make his $8 million a year, at least come close to it. Anthony Miller could still be a big part of the offense, but I think it would be foolish, especially going back and looking at the productivity of
what I'm saying is that Anthony Miller can still be good, but let's not think of him as Odell Beckham. Yeah,
well, and I 100% agree with you. I think that reasonable expectations for Miller, I would say, would be 5, 6, maybe 700 yards on the high side. But I mean, just looking at this offense, we've had multiple conversations offline about this, that this offense is going to be, it's designed to be spread around. I don't think there's going to be one guy like Allen Robinson, for example. I don't think Allen Robinson's going to have 1,400 yards. That's not my expectation for somebody like that. But I do think that he needs to be the top pass catcher, whether that be, targets, whether that be yards, whether that be touchdowns, something along those lines. I think that he needs to be that way. And ultimately, like you said, if he somehow is hurt or doesn't do what he needs to do, I think regardless of who steps up, whatever it may be, they're going to struggle. And that's just kind of a big reality. I mean, they didn't give him $14 million a year to not be a big part of the offense, and I think that has to start week 1. And maybe I'm being a little too tough in terms of saying, take him off the pitch count, but
I don't think you are.
So I don't know. I mean, it sounds like we pretty well have the same take, and maybe I'm just impatient. I want to see him play. I understand that they're taking it easy with him, but it's about time to at least let him get in and see what's going on, because you don't want him to be unprepared for the season. And I'm starting to get worried that's the kind of the path we're heading down, because they're taking maybe too careful of a plan with him.
Why do you hate Allen Robinson, Aaron?
You know, I don't even know what to say to that.
Let's talk that preseason game. So we've discussed Trubisky, we've discussed the Whitehair and Daniels, we've discussed watching Robinson. With the offense and starters in general and defensive starters in general likely playing at least a quarter, what else should we be watching out for, Aaron?
Well, I think there's quite a bit. I mean, I think obviously, you know, starters, whatever it may be, we've already hit on a few of them. I mean, obviously the offensive line's a big one. I think you look at some of the positions. I think another one is going to be the backup boundary corner position. I think that especially because Mukamara is probably not going to play. Surprise, surprise, he's got another nagging injury. Hopefully this doesn't go into the season.
It's fine. It's the preseason. It's fine.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, and this happened last preseason too. I'm just hoping he doesn't miss games. But I think that's a big one right there. I think that position, I mean, let's be honest, Marcus Cooper sucks. I mean, I'm just going to throw that out there.
You do hate Marcus Cooper. I don't have to ask that question. Continue.
No, my animosity with him started last year against Pittsburgh. That was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life. And I understood them, okay, bring him back, whatever it may be. But he's looked like crap. I mean, and maybe you can speak to that better than I can in camp. Maybe he looked better in camp, but he has not looked good at all in these first two games.
No, part of you know all those Anthony Miller highlight plays and just him looking generally good. So a lot of that was actually done on Marcus Cooper. So take that for what it's worth. Yeah.
But my question is, you don't have a very good player in Marcus Cooper. So let's see more of even Doran Grant. I mean, Doran Grant's actually looked pretty decent. The guy I really want to see for this corner position is Kevin Tolliver. I understand he had an injury. I mean, he lit it up in camp early on, and there's just been nothing. And part of me kind of wonders if they're purposely doing that so they can sneak him onto the practice squad. But I think this position battle for that backup corner position is wide open right now. And I think the Bears
don't count out Michael Joseph either.
Yeah, and see, Michael Joseph has played well, and he looked like more of a projection to me. So I think boundary corner, the backup boundary corner is definitely good. And then I think defensive line, I mean, there's so many. We could probably go on for days. Do you have any input on any of the stuff that you're going to be looking for?
Yeah, I was gonna say pass rusher. So we touched on it at the top of the show. Kylie Fitz was a no-show against the Bengals. I think he was utter garbage, and obviously Isaiah Irving didn't travel to Cincinnati. The Bears still have a huge issue there. I'm going to be curious. I would be curious to see if they make a move with Denver. I know it's been discussed with Shaq Barrett or Shane Ray. I'm still pretty meh on both of those additions. So I want to see what Fitz and Irving can do in a rebound. I mean, I know Denver's offensive line isn't necessarily great or even adequate, but that shouldn't mean that they have even more of a stellar performance in more time. As long as Aaron Lynch is out, however long he's out, I don't expect him to be back anytime soon. He's still not practicing. I want to see one of those young guys flash and get back to a trajectory of potentially, at least being a solid starter, at least being a solid rotational player. This defense badly needs an edge rusher opposite Floyd. And right now it looks really precarious. You know me, I like Acho, and I like what Sam Acho offers, but he's not a difference maker. You're not getting even 5 to 6 sacks from him. Your defense is being held back if he's a starter. He's a solid player at best, but he's not a difference maker. So you want to see Irving and Fitz. You want to see Irving and Fitz flash.
So I mean, then that's an interesting point because I feel the same exact way about Acho. Solid player, probably more of a 3 or 4 than your number 2. I mean, on a scale from 1 to 10 at this point, I mean, how concerned are you about outside linebacker, especially with Aaron Lynch? I mean, at this point, if he doesn't start playing, man, I don't think he's going to make the team. But they could make a trade. But I mean, what are they going to do? I'm concerned.
How concerned I am about Aaron Lynch, or how concerned am I about the pass rush, about the
pass rush in general? I don't think Aaron Lynch really matters at this point.
Yeah, I don't think he matters either. So yeah, I know most people will follow me or read me or listen to me have not been railing about this all off season. And what I essentially feared in January has come to fruition. I don't want to say 10 to sound like I'm being hyperbolic, but I honestly think it's a 10. I think that we're in a situation where Leonard Floyd could have his real breakout year where he has 10 to 12 sacks and is one of the best edge defenders in football. And this is still one of the worst, and this could still be overall one of the worst edge groups in the NFL, and they could still be held back by whoever else is on the other side of Floyd. I really think it's that awful. I don't have confidence that Fitz and Irving are gonna flash against the Broncos or will flash as well as they did against the Hall of Fame game, which was against depth guys for the Ravens. I don't have much confidence in Acho. And for as much as Floyd is my boy, until he plays, a majority of the season, I don't have so much confidence in him either having that kind of great season. So I'm at a 10. I'm at a 10, honestly. This is the worst position the Bears currently have on their roster to me.
And I agree. So, and this is something I've been thinking about for the last few days. It's like, what gets you even down to, let's say, a 5 at this point? I mean, is there any move possible out there within reason that would make sense for them that they could actually make?
Oh, I think Ray or Barrett probably get them down to a 7, maybe 7.5, and then maybe a Connor Barr I think is still out there. Maybe gets them to a 6 or 7.
No, he signed with somebody. I can't even remember who it was, but he signed a 2-year deal, really cheap deal, dude. It was like $2.5 million a year. I don't know why the Bears couldn't have done that.
I don't know. I think at this point they're not going to find a star or any means. They're not going to find a real starter. At this point, to get it down to a 5, they'd have to add 2 Sam Acho types, 2 guys that are going to get you 4 to 5 sacks in a rotational. Because aside from that, I don't see any move. I know a lot of people really Shaq Barrett upside, Shane Ray upside. Well, there's a reason Denver would be willing to part with them. You know what I mean? There's a reason. There's a reason. The upside and potential are the biggest selling points for sports fans, but it doesn't mean anything until you actually do it on the field. Hold on, let me look at Connor Barr. Barr Rams. Barwin. Yeah, there was. So I said Connor Barr. Oh my God, I am awful. And he signed with the Giants. So I don't know why the Bears didn't do that. He's only 31 years old. That would have been a move that I would have really liked. I wouldn't have felt that much better about the Bears pass rush, but that would have brought me down to a 7 and a 7.5. That's a really good player. That's a really good guy who knows his role. That's a guy that could thrive in a defense that has Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman, Leonard Floyd, Roquan Smith, and Danny Trevathan, taking the attention away from him. I don't see a move out there. I see them entering the 2018 season, and kind of at this point, it's going to be their wide receiver of last year, where they survive. They tried to survive at it for a few weeks, and then it eventually just sinks the defense and sinks what the potential of what this defense could actually be.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about that. There's one guy that they could make a move for.
There is one guy
about that.
There is one guy they can make a move for, and we we have multiple questions, and they're all Mac-related questions. So first, Jonathan Wood, our good friend Jonathan Wood asks, once the Bears trade for ongoing Raiders holdout, that is, Khalil Mack, and Trubisky has his inevitable MVP breakout, how many points do the Bears win the Super Bowl by? So that's a nice segue for Khalil Mack, who may or may not be on the trade block. I don't think he's necessarily on the trade block at all. I think it's maybe a 0.5% of him being available than someone, hey, we're going to godfather you and give you 3 first-round picks. What would it take for the Bears to actually make a Mack move, Aaron? What would it take? Because based off my eyes, that wasn't Khalil Mack in a 58 jersey on Monday or on Tuesday, that is. So what would it take for the Bears to get Mack and to finish this defense?
That's I hate to say it, but I think something around probably a first rounder for this year, next year, and probably a third rounder either this year or next year. I mean, it's not going to be cheap at all, and that may be underselling too. I do find it interesting. I want to say it was Sports Illustrated, maybe it's NFL.com. Somebody asked. It was an ex-GM, and I can't even remember who it was now. I'll have to go back and read it later, and maybe I can. Somebody's curious, I'll post it on Twitter or whatever. But the ex-GM, I want to say it was like Banner, Michael Banner. Does that sound
Joe
about right?
Banner? It was Joe Banner.
There we go. Yeah, Joe Banner. And he said the low side of what he thought it would be a first and a third, and then the high side would be 2 firsts, depending on where the picking would be at. So, I mean, personally speaking, if let's just say the Raiders, said that's what they were asking for, and I'm Ryan Pace, hell yeah, I do that. But realistically, I don't think that's going to happen. But I mean, that's the kind of move and maybe I'm a little more hyped up on this than you are, but this is the kind of move that I think could take the Bears from potential top 10 defense if everything goes right.
Wait, where are you on this hype scale? Give me a percentage. Where of this actually happening?
Actually happening, no, I don't think it's very high, but I'm saying if it happened, happened,
I'd be pretty hyped if the Bears got Khalil Mack. That's a Super Bowl contender if they got Mack. Give me some credit.
Okay, well, I see. I didn't think you were. I was going to say, because that goes from potential top 10 defense if everything in the world goes right to, I'd say guaranteed probably at least top 7, top 5 defense, Super Bowl caliber defense.
Yep.
And I mean that's a huge move. Obviously, you miss out on some of the first round picks, whatever it may be, but at the same time, you could probably spend those next 2 first round picks on pass rushers and still not get the quality of player that you would get in Khalil Mack.
You're getting what you get in a Mack trade, and that's, again, if he's traded. It's not going to happen, but if he's traded, you're getting another Hall of Famer. You're getting a guy who has 40.5 sacks in 4 years, which that doesn't take into account how many other times he just in general disrupts the quarterback and pressures them. You have a guy who's a former Defensive Player of the Year, probably will add at least another award or 2 under his belt before it's all said and done. He's only 27. And it would be a move where you're going all in on this Trubisky window thing, where you're paying Mack as the highest paid defensive player in the year, or the highest paid defensive player in football, because Trubisky's at his cheapest, and you can maintain him and you can have him the extension for 3 or 4 years. So it would be a win-now move of the highest order. It would change this defense. I think, for me, the only thing that would actually make sense for the Bears is probably a first and probably 2 firsts, maybe a first and a high second. Like you said, Joe Banner said, it depends on where those selections are. So if it's a low first, if it's something in the teens, or if it's something in the 20s, that's probably not going to be something of value. But if you have something, again, in the top 10, let's say the Bears struggle, go 6-10, 7-9 this year, and they're number 9 or number 11, and then you throw in your second rounder, and then maybe trade Nick Kwiatkowski, or maybe trade Danny Trevathan. The Raiders have a real needed inside linebacker. John Gruden is stupid enough to value that over a generational pass rusher. So that's probably a deal that could be done. That's probably a deal that probably would take. You might throw in another mid-round pick, but that's probably what it would take to get a Mack. That's a really hefty cost. What would actually get it done, and I hate myself for even suggesting this, I guess it just depends on how Gruden feels about him too, is throwing in Leonard Floyd. I don't think the Bears would do that, but I think that would probably guarantee it. It would be a swap, but you're getting a proven Defensive Player of the Year. You're getting a proven top 3 defensive player, arguable defensive player in the league, versus Floyd, who still has to do it, and that would probably guarantee it. So, yeah, feel free to chide me, whatever.
I could definitely see that as a possibility. But what I will say is a situation like with the Leonard Floyd, yes, you're upgrading Leonard Floyd, but at the same time, you still have a situation where you have Sam Acho standing on the other side, and if he goes down, then Isaiah Irving.
I knew when I said it. I was just saying, like, of another. No, of another.
I think it's somewhat realistic, though. I mean, not overall realistic, but in a scenario where the Bears would trade for Khalil Mack, I could see that making sense for absolutely sure. But it's just one of those situations for the Bears. It's like, yes, you're upgrading that one position, but then you're also going to be paying that guy a ton of money, and you still have another hole there. So it's kind of one of those. It's like, yes, it makes them better, their defense better, but I don't think it makes them nearly as good as if they still have Leonard Floyd and Khalil Mack. But then again, you're talking about a much higher price too. So I don't know. That's a tough situation. I know Bears fans are excited and they want something like that to happen, and I wouldn't mind it either. But I mean, the reality of something like that happening are very slim to none. How many Hall of Fame level players get traded? Like, legitimately get traded ever? I can't think of like one. Maybe like Champ Bailey. That was the last real huge NFL trade. I can't think of one off the top of my head. Yeah, I guess the last one would probably be because didn't Peyton Manning, did he get traded or he just get released?
That was the last big. That was a free agent move. But yeah, so like let's just say in general, like, star players switching teams like that, it doesn't happen. That's just the reality of the situation.
That's exactly right. Something will happen. I mean, we always see situations like this where things look awful, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, then Mac reports and everything's good. So more often than more likely than not, I mean, he's still going to be with the Raiders or whatever it may be. But the good news is on the flip side of this is the free agent class as a whole next year is really good, and so is the draft class. So the Bears will have a chance to add, but it just won't be until next year.
It just won't be. They'll just have to suffer through 2018 of watching Floyd getting 13 to 14 sacks and then the rest of the edge rush group just letting them down. I was going to say, in a stupid, like, say, a brotherly division rival type thing, how much would it be worth it to the Bears, just obviously from a competitive standpoint, and to keep them away from a rival? Would it be worth it to the Bears to trade for Mac if they knew that the Packers were aggressively in on him, just maybe to drive up the price, or to even actually acquire him to keep him from going to Green Bay?
Absolutely. I mean, that's you just said it. I mean, that's probably a Hall of Famer there. I mean, that's the last thing you need is a Hall of Fame quarterback terrorizing you on the offense and a Hall of Fame defensive end terrorizing you on the defense. I just don't think that would be one of those situations where, yeah, you probably had to say, okay, let's try to get something done. And I mean, let's be realistic. The Packers did that. They drove. Well, I don't know if they drove up the price, but they were in the bidding on Allen Robinson. They, at least at very worst, they drove up the price on Kyle Fuller with that offer sheet. I mean, the Bears and the Packers have already been kind of going back and forth on a few different players this year. And I mean, that would be really cool to see the Bears hit the trifecta in a situation like that. But that's my ultimate nightmare right now, because we've seen some ties with Reggie McKenzie and the Packers front office and stuff like that. It's like, man, that would be an absolute disaster for the Bears if Khalil Mack somehow got dealt there.
Yeah, it feels like we're coming to a head with that. It feels like the Bears and Packers are going to have another unofficial matchup here in the next few weeks. Should Mac actually hit the trade block, that's why I mentioned that. But alas, for now, we can live at peace and just live with our shitty edge rush situation and just live with the Packers staying put. Aaron, I got to say, I appreciate you coming on. This is our first real, all-official Windy City Gridiron podcast. As the same person, it wasn't really difficult for me to get you on.
Yeah, I have such a busy schedule. Although lately it's with this new job, and my wife's got a new schedule, so it's been trying to coordinate it, because it's like I'm on, for those that don't know, I'm on the West Coast, so it's what is it right now? 7:30 my time as we're recording this, and it's 9:30 on your side. So it's trying to coordinate something to where it works for the both of us has definitely been a little bit more difficult. But hopefully we can keep doing stuff like this.
Hopefully we can keep moving forward, and you guys can follow Aaron on Twitter at Aaron Leming NFL. He writes for us now at Windy City Gridiron. He also contributes at the Bear Report. Offers great insight as always on Twitter, and as always, great conversations with him over podcast form. You can follow me on Twitter at Robert Zaglinski, and you can follow us overall on Twitter at WC Gridiron. As always, everybody, this is the Nick Kwiatkowski episode of Winnie's WCG Radio. It's number 44. So as always, stay classy.